The temperature outside your window right now is manageable. You have walls, insulation, heating, stored food, and the ability to order whatever you need without stepping outside for more than a few minutes. Now take all of that away. Take away the walls, take away the stored food, take away the heating, take away everything invented in the last 10,000 years, and replace it with a small group of people, an open landscape, and a winter that is trying to kill you. This is the situation ancient humans faced repeatedly, and the real story of how they survived it is one of the most remarkable achievements in human history. Here's the first thing to understand. The winters ancient humans faced were not like the winters most people experience today. For much of the Pleistocene, the geological epoch spanning roughly 2.6 million to 11,700 years ago, ice ages gripped the northern hemisphere repeatedly, creating conditions far more severe than anything modern industrial civilization has encountered. Average temperatures in what is now Europe were 10 to 15 degrees Celsius colder than today. The growing season was dramatically shorter. Megafauna that could provide food, including woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, cave lions, and giant deer, were present but dangerous and not guaranteed. Glaciers covered vast areas of what are now temperate regions. The landscape in many places looked more like modern Siberia or northern Canada than like anything that would be recognizable to someone from a temperate climate today. And yet, through all of it, humans survived. Not just survived, but spread. Populations moved into increasingly cold environments, adapted, innovated, and persisted through conditions that should, by any reasonable calculation, have been lethal to a tropical primate. Understanding how they did it requires looking at the problem the way they would have experienced it, not as a single dramatic challenge, but as a series of interlocking problems that each demanded a specific solution. The first and most immediate problem was warmth. Human beings are thermoregulatory animals, which means our bodies work hard to maintain a core temperature of approximately 37 degrees Celsius regardless of external conditions. In sub-zero temperatures without protection, the human body loses heat faster than it can generate it, and hypothermia sets in within hours. The solution that ancient humans developed was clothing, but not clothing in the modern sense. The archaeological evidence for sophisticated cold-weather garments begins appearing roughly 30,000 years ago when we find bone needles thin enough and precise enough to sew fitted garments from hides. These weren't draped animal skins, they were tailored. Archaeological evidence from sites in Russia and Siberia shows tiny-eyed needles that could only have been used to create tightly fitted, layered garments, the difference between a blanket and a proper winter coat. Researcher and evolutionary anthropologist Ian Gilligan, who has studied the evolution of clothing specifically in the context of cold climate survival, has argued that the development of tailored, fitted, cold-weather clothing represents one of the most important technological revolutions in human prehistory, more significant in terms of survival value than many tools that receive far more archaeological attention. A fitted hide garment that seals at the wrists, neck, and ankles prevents convective heat loss with an efficiency that a draped skin cannot match. It allows a human being to function in temperatures far below what an unclothed body can survive. But clothing alone was not enough. Shelter was equally critical. The image of ancient humans living in caves is partially accurate, but significantly more complicated than the popular version. Caves were certainly used where available, and they offered genuine thermal advantages. Rock is an excellent insulator. Cave interiors maintain a relatively stable temperature even when external temperatures are extreme, and the enclosed space of a cave retains body heat from multiple people and fire with remarkable efficiency. Archaeological evidence from sites like Lascaux in France and Altamira in Spain shows that these cave systems were used continuously or repeatedly over long periods, suggesting they were understood as reliable winter refuges. But caves are not universally available, and ancient humans often lived in environments without accessible cave systems. In the open steppes of Eastern Europe and Central Asia, where caves were rare, ancient humans built shelters using the resources available: mammoth bones and tusks for structural frameworks, hides for walls and roofing. Remarkable archaeological evidence from sites in Ukraine and Russia, dating to between 15,000 and 25,000 years ago, shows the foundations of circular or oval structures built from the bones and tusks of dozens of woolly mammoths. These were not crude piles, they were engineered structures with careful attention to load-bearing capacity, wind resistance, and the layering of hides to minimize heat loss. This is where it gets interesting. Because the solution to winter was not any single technology, it was a system of interlocking adaptations that worked together, and fire was at the center of that system. Humans have been controlling fire for somewhere between 400,000 and 1.5 5 million years, depending on how you interpret the available evidence. But the management of fire for warmth in extreme cold goes far beyond simply lighting a flame. Archaeological evidence from cold climate Paleolithic sites shows that ancient humans understood fire management in sophisticated ways, using dense hardwoods that burn slowly and produce sustained heat, positioning fires to maximize radiant heat within enclosed spaces, using stone hearths that retain heat and prevent the fire from spreading, and maintaining fires through the night, which requires a social organization in which someone stays awake to tend the fire while others sleep. Food storage is another dimension of winter survival that is often overlooked. The challenge of winter is not only physical cold, but caloric scarcity. Animals that ancient humans hunted became scarcer and more difficult to track in deep snow. Plant foods were largely unavailable. A group that entered winter without adequate food stores faced starvation on top of the thermal challenge. Ancient humans in cold climates developed multiple strategies for food storage. Frozen food storage is the most obvious. In sub-zero conditions, meat and fish freeze naturally and can be preserved for weeks or months. Archaeological evidence from Siberia and the Arctic shows that ancient hunters sometimes stored large quantities of frozen meat in underground pits, exploiting the permafrost as a natural freezer. Fat was also a critical survival resource in ways that are easy to underestimate from a modern perspective. Fat is the most calorie-dense food available in cold environments, providing roughly 9 calories per gram compared to 4 for protein or carbohydrate. Ancient hunters understood this intuitively and targeted not just the meat of large animals, but the fat specifically. Bone marrow, the fatty tissue inside large bones, was extracted and consumed. Animal fat was rendered and stored. The nutritional understanding embedded in these practices anticipates the modern understanding of cold weather caloric needs by tens of thousands of years. Social organization was perhaps the least visible but most essential component of winter survival. A single individual cannot survive a serious cold weather crisis alone. Fire must be maintained, shelter must be constructed and repaired, food must be shared across individuals who may temporarily be unable to hunt or forage due to illness, injury, or care responsibilities. Archaeological evidence suggests that Paleolithic groups during the height of the Ice Age maintained larger social networks than might be expected, with evidence of long-distance material exchange suggesting that groups maintained relationships with other groups across considerable distances, relationships that would have been essential when local conditions failed. Here's the modern mirror. The systems that ancient humans built to survive deadly winters, layered insulating clothing, engineered shelters, fire management, food storage, fat-rich diets, and social networks of mutual support, are not primitive predecessors to modern technology. They are the foundations on which modern technology was built. Every winter survival technology that exists today is a more sophisticated version of something that ancient humans were doing, in some cases for hundreds of thousands of years. The temperature outside your window right now is manageable. It is manageable because of what ancient humans figured out, in conditions far more extreme than anything most people alive today will ever experience, with nothing but observation, ingenuity, and the accumulated knowledge of people who had already survived the winter before.